All right, as promised, here to help talk about this game one. I can't believe we're actually talking about an actual game. Greg Auman from Fox Sports, a longtime Tampa Bay Buccaneers reporter, covers the whole league in the NFC South for Fox. Greg, thanks for doing this. Also, Greg used to be at the Athletic. In fact, I just slipped into our DM conversation. We haven't talked on DM. We've talked otherwise, but not on DM since I came on board in 2019. And the message is you saying, "Hey, congrats, welcome aboard. If I can help, let me know." And I can tell you, in this business, it's very rare. So this is the kind of guy we're dealing with here.
No,
Greg, thank.
good talking to you, and excited to have week one, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, before we get to the game, let's get to the important part. How hot is it going to be? Because obviously it's got to factor in. It's been very hot here. You can imagine all summer, but game day is different, and I would have to imagine a week one home game is an advantage for Tampa, unless you're playing like the Cardinals at home or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say it being a 425 game helps you a little bit in that it's going to be cooler, and it pretty much rains every day in Tampa around 4 o'clock this time of year. So I haven't looked ahead. I guess we're close enough now. I should really be looking at like the 5 day forecast.
All right.
But it would not surprise me at all if there's rain during, or maybe even a big part of this game on Sunday.
All right. Well, we'll see how that goes. Obviously, Washington has Tampa week one, at Arizona week four. I don't know who planned this thing. I'm very mad at them. All right. So, well, let's talk about this. I guess Tampa Bay. It's Tampa's kind of feels like a weird team, right? Am I correct? They're the three-time defending NFC South champion, and yet they seem like a massive afterthought in the conversation of the conference about possible contender. And I guess I kind of understand why, especially like Baker Mayfield had a better year, but I guess there's some question. Whatever it is, where are you at with Tampa? Are they a team that is getting overlooked, or are they maybe being properly overlooked?
No, I think they're definitely getting slighted. They kind of like that. They very much like the underdog role here in Tampa. So Baker Mayfield wants you to pick them third, if not fourth, in the division. Jason Light, their GM, likes to talk about keeping receipts and all the people that pick other teams. A year ago, I think most people had the Saints. The Saints had Derek Carr coming in, and there's the expectation when you upgrade your quarterback play, it should lead directly to wins. Obviously, I don't think there was quite the same expectation for the Bucs and Baker Mayfield, just because Carr got this massive, $150 million contract. Baker Mayfield had like a $4 million contract. So it's kind of much the same this year. I mean, Atlanta, I think last year, if you watched the Falcons, it was very much a team that had pretty much all the pieces and not the pieces at quarterback. And now they've gone out and gotten two. Had the high dollar guy in free agency to get Kirk Cousins and bring him in, and then took Michael Penix as well to go ahead and put a top 10 draft pick in the same position. So I think that's why Vegas likes Atlanta, why a lot of people picking the NFC South are picking Atlanta to win. But the Bucs feel like they're right there. I mean, like you said, they've won the division 3 times in a row. Just had the same record as the Saints. They won on a tiebreaker a year ago, so it's not like they've really run away with it.
Right.
They're like the last 2 years. You think about just the last 2 years, they're 2-time defending champs, and they're also 17-17. So it's not like they've been this monolithic force to deal with. They've just been good enough to win a bad division, which honestly might be the case again this year, really.
And even the playoff win last year, it was
Right.
more about the Eagles being terrible than it was about the Bucs. Like, it felt people were like, "Oh, Tampa's
Yeah.
going to win this game because Philly is such a mess right now."
Right. I think the fact that they won as convincingly as they did probably validated a little bit of their success. Held their own with Detroit on the road. But yeah, for the most part, this is seen, if it's not the AFC South, the NFC South is seen as the worst division of football. So this is the kind of thing where people are going to be mad they have a home game in the playoffs if it plays out the way most expected.
Obviously, every team loses some pieces here and there, and hopefully I'm not about to sound like a complete moron, but it doesn't feel like Tampa. Like, it feels like they were able to keep together some of their core. I mean, obviously, again, I know they lost some pieces. Did they lose anything so dramatic that you've got a question about it going into the year?
A little bit. I mean, the big talk of the offseason was definitely them keeping the core intact. Had a ton of free agents that could have gone elsewhere. Kept Baker Mayfield, kept Mike Evans, kept Antoine Winfield, kept Levante David, re-signed Tristan Wirfs to a long-term deal. So paid a ton to keep this group together. And some people are like, if you were 17-17 in the last 2 years, is that really something you want? Is that a band you have to keep together?
Right.
They feel that way. They did take some changes, some losses on defense. There's 3 guys that were kind of mainstays going all the way back to their Super Bowl team in 2020. All 5 years that Bowles has been here in Tampa. one from each line. So Shaq Barrett, who would had the team record for sacks his first year here, was a big part. He left. He kind of retired. He could come back, but they let him go in advance of him retiring. Devin White, their linebacker, who was an emotional leader, big energy part of those Super Bowl team, the playoff teams. He's with the Eagles now. Kind of let him go in free agency, and then they traded Carlton Davis to the Lions for a 3rd-round pick. So they've got a guy named Zion McCollum they like a lot that'll step in for him. Actually played more than Carlton last did. Their corners were dinged up a lot last year, so McCollum was their 3rd corner, but actually played more than either of the starters. So there's 3 new faces on defense. They'll be counting on KJ Britt, a 4th-year linebacker, really hasn't played that much at all on defense, to step in for Devin White. Probably not as quick as Devin White, but maybe a little sharper, in the right place at the right time type. And then outside linebacker, they're real young there. I mean, there's no Shaq Barrett type in terms of name recognition, but 4 of their 6 outside linebackers are in their 1st or 2nd year in the league. So they'll be real young there, and they hope not much of a drop-off there.
Boy, if you had told me when Tampa Bay with Tom Brady beat Washington in the playoffs that Devin White would be sort of like it turned into like a little bit of an afterthought, I'd have been like, what are you talking about? I thought he was like if I recall, like the best player in the game, or at least not named Tom Brady. And yeah, it's just bizarre how life moves fast, Greg. That's what they tell me.
Oh yeah, I mean a year ago, Devin White was not necessarily holding out, but I mean had asked for a trade because he wasn't getting a deal from the Bucs. Wanted to be $100 million linebacker, highest paid linebacker in the game, and it kind of dropped off so much over the course of last year that he goes out. I forget what he got from Philly, maybe 1 year, $6 million or something like that. And he could very well prove it and elevate himself back up to a huge deal a year from now. But yeah, he's definitely not the center of things that he was 2021 way back then.
Yeah, no, for sure. So you may have heard, but the center of things around here these days is some guy named Jaden Daniels. And obviously, we're all excited to see what it's going to look like. We'll be able to watch 3 series of preseason all summer into practice. From the eye test that I can see, he's met all the tests, and the staff has been pretty high on him, etc. That said, now he actually has to face a true opponent in Tampa Bay. What do you look at with Tampa's defense you think is going to give Jaden Daniels the most problems? And then on the flip side, where do you think maybe he can take advantage of some things?
Yeah, the first thing I think of is that Devin White's gone and that you lost some speed in the middle of the field, linebacker there. I think you're going to see a lot of nickel, a lot of 5 DBs and having speed on the field, trying to contain him. I think they definitely respect him, especially the dual threat aspect of him running the ball. I remember the Florida LSU game last year. He could have run for 300 yards if he wanted to. So there's definitely a quickness and an elusiveness. They've handled some of those guys well when they've played them in recent years. It's funny that Bucs fans get into a tizzy anytime they're facing a rookie quarterback. They had a while there; they were just terrible against rookie quarterbacks. And I think the number's 10-5 under Todd Bowles. So usually Bowles can kind of throw a little bit of everything in a rookie quarterback, try and throw them off. Number 2 quarterbacks taken number 2 overall, have done really well against the Bucs. Mariota back in 2015 made his debut here in Tampa, threw for 4 touchdowns. Stroud, they got Stroud last year, I think in November, but Stroud had like one of the best games ever for a rookie quarterback, threw for like 470 and 4 touchdowns. Bucs almost won that game, ended up losing on a touchdown on a last second score. But no, I think there's people here worried about, I think it helps the Bucs that you get Jaden Daniels in week 1. You get a new offense, a new coach, everything new. It's hard for that to take in the first week. I think we were doing, it's like 1st-round draft picks in their NFL debut. I forget how long it's been since they won, but I think Darnold is the last guy to win as a 1st-round pick, making his NFL debut. It's 10 in a row. I think they've lost. So it usually takes a little time for it to click, if you will. But no, I think there's a healthy respect for Jaden Daniels. Rachaad White, who's the Bucs running back down here, played with him at Arizona State. I can remember in post-game, I think it was December of last year, he had a Jaden Daniels t-shirt on back when Jaden was just at LSU. They're really tight. They're good friends, played together 2 years at ASU. So there's definitely a healthy respect and an awareness of how dangerous he can be even in his first game in the league.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I didn't realize that Mariota, because obviously he's here now too. That he had made his debut in Tampa. Yeah, I mean, look, I think Jaden Daniels has looked the part. When you have the guy who can be the dual threat and run, obviously that can raise the floor, if nothing else, because if he can get out of trouble if need to. The question is, of course, and it's one that's being discussed here this summer. Is he gonna, if he gets out of run that gets out of trouble, is he gonna run into trouble and not slide? But knock on wood, we don't want any injuries. After all we've endured here, we at least get to have some fun for once and cover something that should be a good time. That said, the one of the big concerns with Washington is their offensive line, particularly at tackle. We don't know yet if third round pick Brandon Coleman is going to be the left tackle. He was trending in that direction in camp, but then he missed all of preseason with a shoulder strain. So we'll see the other tackle, Andrew Wiley or Cornelius Lucas, depending how it goes. Journeyman kind of types. Fine, but nothing great. If that's what's going to be scary for Washington, does Tampa Bay have enough on the perimeter to make that a problem for this team?
Yeah, they should. Their best pass rusher is the second-year guy named Yaya Diaby, and he went down with an ankle injury like August 1st. Literally just returned to practice yesterday, so he's kind of a question mark if he's able to go, and I think he'll be able to go. He's not going to be looking like somebody that's played a full month of football, but he's a guy they hope can be a double-digit sack guy. Real young though. Like I said, they've got a rookie. They put a second-round draft pick, a kid named Chris Braswell from Alabama that will play in the rotation a lot. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is a guy who's had 4 or 5 sacks a year the 3 years he's been in the league. But no, it's hard to know how quickly they'll take advantage of it. Bowles likes to dial up all kinds of blitzes and different defenses look. So you'll see nickel blitzes, you'll see safety blitzes. Antoine Winfield had a ton of sacks last year. He could get in on that too. It won't just be a traditional 4-man rush. I think you'll see a lot of different looks and a lot of different pressure coming from places you don't expect it.
To help Jaden Daniels and the line is, they're going to want to run the ball. I think Washington, maybe even more than some people would think. They've got Brian Robinson, who's, that big sort of interior runner, and then Austin Eckler. He's looked good in camp, but I keep sort of pumping the brakes slightly, only because I just want to see it in a real game. It's when they're not tackling you, maybe look a little bit quicker. Now, of course, Tampa has one of the better defensive tackles in Vita Vea. So if Brian Robinson is sort of going to be the main focus to an extent, I would guess. What does that matchup kind of look like? Washington's offensive line is the interior is sort of their strength, but obviously Vita Vea is there. What's Tampa Bay's run defense kind of feeling like?
Yeah, I mean, they take a lot of pride in their run defense. There was a while that they were number one run defense in the NFL back in like the Super Bowl heyday 2021, and they dropped off. I mean, they weren't nearly as dominant. Vita Vea is where it starts. They got kind of Kalijah Cansey, a second-year defensive lineman that'll help them with that. He's kind of more of a pass rusher than a run stopper. But KJ Britt, that linebacker steps in. He's a stout linebacker, good against the run tackler. So that'll be improved there. So no, they're going to want to take away the run. They're going to want to make Washington one. I don't even say one-dimensional because Daniels can still run even when he's passing. But I think they're going to try and make Jaden beat them and take their chances with that. It's one of those where they don't have a lot of depth at corner. They've got, probably 5 DBs they like that they'll use a lot. They've got a rookie nickel named Tyke Smith from Georgia that I think will play a lot. They'll be counting on him from the get-go. He's kind of quick enough where if you had somebody you were going to try and guard against Jaden Daniels running the ball a ton, I think he'll be involved in that as well. He's good against the run too. But yeah, it'll be fun to see. It's one of those where I think they want to be the run defense they were 3-4 years ago and be a top 5, top 10 run defense. We just don't know if it'll take just yet.
I'm not one to for hyperbole or to overpraise the guy that everybody else wants to praise, because I'm always like, yeah, it could be overpraising. Jaden Daniels obviously getting a lot of attention. That said, having watched him all summer, I'm pretty impressed, and his deep ball accuracy is spot on. So Washington's playmakers don't really scare you other than Terry McLaurin, and it's a lot of mystery. They just signed Noah Brown the other day, but I think Daniels will take shots as long as he has the time to do it. I don't think he's going to be afraid to do that. Did you see in the preseason the big moment where he audibled out and then threw the 42-yard pass? That to me, and I asked some people around the building and they kind of concurred. That said to me, he's not afraid of this situation. I know it's preseason and not the regular season, but nonetheless, to do that, to have the guts to your first third down in your first series, and your coach is basically telling you, dude, we're on our 4th string tackle and we have a guard playing right tackle. Don't do anything stupid. And then he does that, says a lot. So I think he will take his shots. Obviously, we'll see how that unfolds. Speaking of taking shots, let me get to the part where I'm most nervous for Washington. Mike Evans is very good. He's very tall. And Then you got Chris Godwin, who is he going to be more slot? I would think, or no?
That's kind of that's been the talk. That's certainly what I would expect. Yeah.
Okay, so the outside in particular, though, with Evans, it was Jalen McMillan, the rookie. Is he the other outside guy
Yeah.
at this
He'll
point?
be the three. Yeah.
So Washington's outside corners are, I don't know. I don't know. Emmanuel Forbes last year, first round pick, terrible year. I think he's shown some growth, and I'm curious to see how the new defensive staff uses him because they haven't shown much at all. And I think they will, similar to what you were saying, they have a lot more blitzes from different spots, and I think that will they'll probably try to find ways to get Forbes' playmaking more involved. But that's a dicey situation. Benjamin St-Juste allowed the second most yards of any cornerback last year. They signed Mike Davis from the Chargers, and he's a guy. They really like Mikey Sanders, still their second round pick, but in theory, he's the slot guy, but they've already said he may have to play outside more. He's like 5'9". So to that end, is that, I assume that's got to be a matchup. Tampa's going, oh my, we gotta take advantage of this.
I would think so. Sanders still is a guy the Bucs liked a lot. I really thought the Bucs might take him. They ended up getting Tyke in the third round, but I doing mock drafts. He's a guy. I talked to Mike. Loved his visit with the Bucs. I think he was talking about how when he went to the Bucs, it felt like when he went to Michigan for the first time, that kind of thing. So they know him. They appreciate him well too. Two rookie nickels that could play a big part in this run Sunday. I do think they'll try and throw the ball. The whole talk with this offense has been getting a more balanced offense and getting more run and taking some of the pressure off Baker Mayfield, but it is probably what they do best. Mike Evans tied for the NFL lead in touchdown catches last year. Godwin, Godwin's basically, their offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, was with the Rams, and Godwin is kind of in that Cooper Kupp role as just the slot that will get a ton of volume, targets, and catches and all kinds of stuff. He's a free agent this coming spring, so he's in a contract year, want to play well. And they're really high on Jalen McMillan. As a third round draft pick, is the third receiver taken from the Huskies in this draft. He's impressed since he got here, and I think he'll be a really strong three. And maybe they try and unleash him on Sunday too. I do think they'll throw. I think they're going to try and protect Baker. They did a really good job of limiting Baker Mayfield's interceptions last year, so they're not going to have him thrown into trouble. But to look at this secondary, to look at the matchups that are there, I think they should feel confident they should be able to throw the ball pretty well.
All right, so it's time to make a prediction. Everybody loves doing this. So I guess tell me what you think. Like, if Tampa's going to win, what's going to be the key for that? And then what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think their defense is so turnover based and really needing to win that battle there. So I think if they can do that, I think it'd be like +2 in turnovers. They're probably going to sit pretty. They've had mixed bag against rookie quarterbacks. There's some that they beat Bryce Young twice last year. They've beaten some good rookies in recent years. But like I said, CJ Stroud lit them up through all day against this secondary, or mostly what is this secondary that Daniels will face on Sunday. So no, I think the Bucs can win. They need to. Two of their first three are against rookie quarterbacks in Tampa. They get Jaden in week 1. They get Bo Nix in week 3. It's sandwiched between a trip to Detroit that probably doesn't look like a win. So they really, for them to be the team they want to be, they have to kind of take care of business at home against inexperienced quarterbacks these first 2 of these first 3 weeks, and that starts on Sunday.
All right, it'll be interesting. At Greg Auman, Auman is the last name, and you could read him. That's on for X Twitter. You can read him on Fox Sports. Greg, hopefully I will see you Sunday. Hopefully I will not need to bring a second shirt for the sweat, but knowing me and the weather, that seems like a reasonable possibility. Right. Look forward to it, man. I'm excited. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, of course. See you Sunday. Thanks again for doing it. Have a good one.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Last Man Standig podcast. Yes, I'm your host, Ben Standig, and I cover the Washington Commanders for The Athletic. It's game week. We made it. I still don't understand how it's September, but I do understand that NFL football starts in September, so I guess these things have to go hand in hand. But it is that time we're going to discuss here Washington's actual week 1 game. Greg Auman from Fox Sports, a longtime Tampa Bay Buccaneers reporter, used to be with The Athletic. He and I spoke about this game. What does Jaden Daniels need to worry about with the Bucs defense, and where does the Bucs defense need to be concerned with what Jaden Daniels provides? discussed how the matchups with Mike Evans and Washington secondary, Terry McLaurin, etc. So a lot to get into here. We'll get to that in a few moments. In addition, I thought, you know what? I always like doing the most indispensable players on the team. It's always an interesting look to me to see like sort of like how many guys actually they need to worry about potentially losing. Where's the depth concerns, who's just looking that good, and so on. So I'm going to give you my top 10 as well, most indispensable commanders for 2024. So we'll get to all that in a moment here on the Last Man Standing podcast. And of course, if you're listening to this, I appreciate you finding the feed, wanting to stay with us, jumping over, or if you're a new listener to the podcast, welcome aboard. Very glad to have you. Of course, Last Man Standing, go find it at iTunes or wherever you do your podcasting. Also, we do have a YouTube channel through Empire Media. I think if you just I think if you just search in YouTube, Last Man Standing podcast, you should find it. But if not, if you go to the Empire Media page, you will find my stuff there as well. Speaking also in terms of my written work on The Athletic, obviously last week I had my NFL agent survey. If you missed it the other day, I had Dalton Ross, noted Commanders fan and Entertainment Weekly big shot. He joined me. He interviewed me about my NFL agent survey, as well as a bit of a season preview for the Commanders. You can go check all of that out. I'm talking to you on Tuesday morning. The Commanders will return to practice tomorrow, Wednesday, and now we are officially back to the normal week. So what that looks like will be, in terms of who's talking when and where, Wednesday we'll get Dan Quinn and the quarterback, so Jaden Daniels. On Thursday, the two coordinators, Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Witt Jr. On Friday, we will get Dan Quinn again. And that, of course, will be the day where we find out most likely if anybody is in or out, or anybody's out for the game. We're going to watch Brandon Coleman this week. Johnny Newton are the primary ones. And I guess to some degree, Noah Brown, having only just arrived here last week. I would imagine they will get him on the field, but how involved he'll be with the offense, we will see about that. So let's get to some of the most indispensable. Let's be another way to talk about this team. I don't know if I have any criteria for this. A lot of it does seem to have like, it's like the WAR stat in baseball. If this player is out of the lineup, what's available after that, and also just what's their impact to this team. I have 10 spots. Here's who I didn't include. I didn't include Tress Way. Now, don't get me wrong. Tress Way is incredibly valuable on multiple fronts, not just as the punter, of course, but the holder, and also big locker room camaraderie guy. So that said, I didn't include him because for where this team is at, I mean, the punter is going to be very important always, but I just didn't include the punter. Sue me if that's a problem for you. Tress Way, we all appreciate Tress Way, future Ring of Honor, all that, but I didn't put him in the top 10. I also didn't include Brandon Coleman, in part because I just don't quite know what to make of this. He was trending towards being the starting left tackle, but then missed all the preseason with his shoulder injury. So I don't know, is he even going to start week 1? We'll see. They do also have Cornelius Lucas and Andrew Wiley, so I get it that you're all kind of rolling your eyes like, come on, Ben, you're not trying to sell me that. They're fine. They can play. That, all things considered, that's a better. If we're viewing them as the backups to Coleman, that's a better option than other positions. That said, Coleman. There's also so much of what this season is, and this will be discussed when we get to the quarterback, is that the indispensable part isn't just about the wins and losses. It's kind of about the soul and the emotion of this season, because the rookies are the true main headliners, because they're the ones, based on the way Adam Peters has built this team, that we know will be here beyond next season, assuming nobody's getting, nobody's bombed out or anything. So they're the ones, so if they show development, then it really increases the ceiling for this team, the potential and the hope that goes with that. So that's why I'm almost tempted to go with Coleman, but I didn't. Here's what I did do, though. Number 10, I went with center Tyler Biadasz. Now, admittedly, part of this is because of all the center injuries they've had the last few years. Then, you had Nick Gates last year. That didn't work out. Ricky Stromberg was just released, their third-round pick. He was released injured. By the way, he's going to have surgery, arthroscopic surgery on his knee that was injured last year. He'll be out probably about 2 months. He's not coming back to Washington, but nonetheless, he's out of action for a bit. So just to have somebody stable in the middle, and Biotish has been a steady presence for Dallas for several years, would go a long way towards helping this team. The fact that he's the center, so with Jaden Daniels, there's that relationship as well. And the strength of this offensive line is going to have to be the interior piece, and that's probably starts with Sam Cosmi and then gets to Biotish. So I get it. Center is always the sexiest spot, but in this case, I don't want to see a world where Washington is without him. If for no other reason, we just don't need to go through this merry-go-round again at center. But also, he's a pretty stout option and a durable one historically in that spot. Number 9, I'm going with a rookie here, Mikey Sanderstill. I'm doing this again. It's a combination of things. One, a lot of questions about the outside cornerbacks. We all understand that, and Greg and I discussed that. But this is again what the rookies represent. They represent hope for the future. But I think, and also in this case, it's about changing the mindset of this team, the culture, and all that stuff that can get a little nauseating when we discuss it over and over again. But it's important to recognize that this is a big deal as to why Adam Peters and Dan Quinn did what they did this offseason in terms of structuring the team and so on. So the fact that Mikey Sanderstill might already be their best corner, and Joe Witt Jr.'s talked about playing him on the outside in 2 cornerback sets, even though he's only 5'9" and change, says a lot about where he is, but it also says a lot about the other options. And since the other the primary outside options are very uncertain as players right now, having Sanderstill out there as a talent and a determinative presence, is that the right way to say that? I don't know. Guy who's a competitor, I think is going to be a huge deal. And again, that he probably, other than Daniel, seems to right now represent the future for this team. And obviously that's kind of where much of the conversation about this group is going. Number 8, I went with Jeremy Chin. I wanted to have some veteran presence. I every time I see Jeremy Chin out there, he is just such a huge defensive back, and his ability to play some in the box is when they move Frankie Louvu to edge rusher, which is going to be a fair amount, and they want to have a quasi second linebacker on the field. I think Jeremy Chin's going to be that guy, on top of the fact that with Quan Martin, they are potentially the best safety pairing we've seen here in some time. He's on a 1-year deal, as are so many of these other players. He's got a lot to show, and if he does, you've heard me say before, if Washington's going to go from not just going over the 6.5 win total that the odds makers have set, but really go past it, they're going to need guys like Chin and Eckler and Ertz to recapture some past glory to some degree. So give me Jeremy Chin at number 8. Speaking of one of those guys, Bobby Wagner at number 7. Look, obviously, we're talking about a future Hall of Fame linebacker here, and it's a massive upgrade over whatever Washington's had at that spot for years. We've heard multiple players on offense talk about how Wagner is calling out their play. Sam Cosmi has said that. Jaden Daniels has said that. The fact that having a guy like that is big, and it's going to be big for Allen and Payne in front of him as well. But also, look, what's going to happen to Bobby Wagner is off the field. To some degree, Frankie Louvu could slide over and take on that role and take on the green dot and all that. But beyond that, until Jordan McGee gets back, and that's a 5th-round rookie, I'm saying, we'll see what they would have. Michael Walker made this team. He's been a starting linebacker in this league, but the drop-off from Wagner to anybody else seems significant, on top of the fact that his presence, that veteran presence, is going to be, I think, very key to help this defense overcome the issues from last year and become more of a formidable group this year. Number 6, I got 2 names here. You can probably guess who they are: John Allen and Daron Payne. I put them together because it's I don't really need to separate one or the other. If they lose one to an injury, then obviously it puts a lot more pressure on the other guy. But at least in theory, Johnny Newton will be able to slide in. So that, the 2nd-round pick, but we haven't seen him play all summer following his very ailment. So Allen and Payne, nonetheless. I talked about this with Dalton the other day. I think it was with Dalton, but they're going to have to. We all just sort of pencil them in as having good years, but they didn't. I mean, they had fine years last year, but they didn't have the Pro Bowl years, and they weren't. For the investment that this team has made and for what they represent for this defense, they're going to have to be wrecking balls in the middle there. The fact that there's two of them and Newton could in theory step in is the only reason they're a little bit lower, but Allen and Payne, nonetheless, you knew they would be on this list, and there they are. Number 5, give me Sam Cosmi, the best offensive lineman for this team. And, again, the depth at that spot, interior offensive line, well, depth anywhere, really, the offensive line is questionable, but it is for sure on the line. Chris Paul is there to fill in as needed. Also, Michael Dieter, the backup center / guard. But Sam Cosmi, he's I think he's got a legit chance to be a Pro Bowl candidate this year. And so not only would losing him be tough because of the talent, but again, what are you doing if he goes out? And then obviously, to protect Jaden Daniels, that's a huge deal. And within the division alone, you've got Dexter Lawrence, you've got Philly's got a couple of options. So plenty of games this year, and also starting week 1 against Vita Vea with the Bucs. They're going to face obviously some really good defensive tackles, and you're going to need Sam Cosmi in there to help deal with that. Number 4, give me Brian Robinson. I know we're in an era where running backs are a bit disposable, so putting up a running back at 4 seems high based on the league right now. But in this instance, I think it's very key. Not only do I think Brian Robinson's positioned to have a really good year, I think that he may represent, at least on offense, other than maybe the lineman, I guess, more of what Dan Quinn is trying to accomplish here in terms of a mindset, in terms of competing, in terms of football brutality. Brian Robinson has that mindset. He's going to run over guys. He is very physical. And they don't have anybody else. If he were to miss time, even goes off the field, they don't have somebody like that. That's why Chris Rodriguez seemed like a no-brainer to make this team way back when. He's now on the practice squad because he didn't have a great summer, and they kept Jeremy McNichols, who, was more of in the Austin Eckler mold. Now, obviously, if Robinson were to miss time, you would still have Eckler, who I did not put on this list. But, I think you want to, sort of, nurse Eckler through the season to make sure he gets through all 17 games after, an injury last year kind of sapped his strengths. So I think Brian Robinson's very key. Not to mention, I think if you want to run the ball a ton to help Jaden Daniels, and you need that goal line threat, that short yardage threat. That's what Robinson is as well. So big deal. I got Robinson at number 4. Number 3, give me Frankie Louvu. Probably easily the most interesting free agent that they added this year in terms of short and long-term aspects. This guy was all over the field for the Panthers last year. Clearly, they're viewing him as the new Micah Parsons for Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr., not in terms of the upside or that level of playmaking, but the versatility. He can get after the passer, of course. He'll be all over the place. We've seen that already in camp. He's a really relentless defender, and that's a weakness on paper is the edge pass rush. Dorrance Armstrong, I think, will be a help for sure, and he could maybe even slide inside if need be for a little bit here and there. But but Louvu is more of the real threat, and if you take him off the field, is Jamin Davis able to replace that? I'm not there yet. Dante Fowler, I doubt it. So Frankie Louvu, not only again the talent, but what happens if he's off the field? He just in general, he's going to have to supply a ton of outside pass rush for this team, and that'll help Allen and Payne as well. Number 2, Terry McLaurin. I don't know where I had him last year. I don't know if I would have put him this high before, not because he's not good, but again, as we discussed with this receiver room, what's there after Terry McLaurin? A lot of questions, a lot of guys with some specific skill sets, but nobody, we all have been saying, who's the quote unquote second receiver? Well, we know who the first receiver is, so he needs to be on the field. I do think that Terry should have a better statistical year than we've seen recently because of Jaden Daniels' aggressiveness and willing to throw the ball down the field. But defenses are going to be aware of this too. They're going to try to take McLaurin out whenever possible. That's up to Cliff Kingsbury to not let that happen, and it's up to Terry as well. But again, don't want to see the world where Terry misses much time at all, even in game. Even without an injury, you need him on that field. You would think, especially in passing situations, because of what he represents, and because at least until we see what De'Ami Brown, Noah Brown, Zacchaeus, what they are looking like, Terry McLaurin's the guy, and it's by a pretty wide margin. Number one, of course, you probably guessed this, Jaden Daniels. Look, the quarterback is always the most important. We get that, and he's got a chance to in my view, to not only be a viable player this year, not like a rookie you have to nurse through the season, but to be a long-term answer for a team that has been looking for a long-term answer forever. We all know enough to not count our chickens before they hatch. The memories of RG3 are not so distant that we can't recall that. But there's so much I like more about this kid, the personality. He really fits in with the culture they're trying to build here. Fits in with the locker room. He doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. You're going to need that balance when you're as a rookie in particular, because you're going to go with these ups and downs. But he also just represents, sort of what I said before. He just represents so much hope. It would be bad enough if, say, they lose games, and again, I'm not expecting a 9-10 win season. But okay, losing games, we've seen that. That's one thing. But don't take away the hope. Don't take away a player that represents everything that is new here on the field for this organization. So the indispensable part here is both the talent, and he's the avatar of hope for this group, and you can't take that away from this fan base right now. That would be just absolutely miserable. And frankly, as a reporter, an unbiased reporter, it's fun to watch these things. I've said before that, like, it's not until we get to the playoffs that I'm watching a game or that I might hypothetically cover a game in which both quarterbacks are fun to watch. That hasn't happened around here in a very long time. It's going to happen now because of Jaden Daniels. So we're all excited to see what he's going to do, how Kingsbury is going to deploy him, but he's got to stay on that field to continue the hope that so many have for this team. All right, there's my list. If you got your list, let me know. Hit me up at Ben Standig on Twitter, or you can email me bstandig@theathletic.com. All right, let's get to my conversation now with Greg Auman of Fox Sports. We're talking week one. It's that time. The Commanders, what are they up against the Bucs? We'll discuss that right now here on this. Did I say? I'm sure I'm going to butcher this a few more times. It's like when they went from Redskins to the football team to the Commanders. I kept botching it. So if I've already botched it, you can count the dings. Maybe I have to have a fine jar for myself. Anyway, here we go. The Last Man Standing podcast, talking with Greg Auman from Fox Sports. All right. Thanks to everyone here for checking out the podcast. Look forward to more this week, and both here on the podcast and on The Athletic. But that is it for now. Ben Standig signing off. Until next time, see ya.